Hi, this is Vedanta. It is cold here and it is gloomy, but we have the good camera, and today we're going to talk about the setup that I wanted to do last week and in detail about how my foot clicker works. So first off, let me show you the setup. Over here we have my desk. Over here we have what I use as a mouse. It's basically like a standard ball mouse, the old style ball mouse, that instead of having a laser has a ball, but it's upside down. So you've got the ball on top here that rolls around. I don't know how clear that comes across, but it operates with this as a scroll wheel. It has 4 mouse buttons. Now, for me to operate it with my thumb is much easier than it would be to operate a full mouse, which I can't grip, obviously. So you just move this around, your cursor moves along with it. This particular model has a nice palm rest. I don't know if all of them are going to have something like that, but I find that this is very helpful. I actually found this by doing research and finding somebody who has a disability where they have their fingers but they're unable to move them, so they would move the mouse just with their hand like that. Now for me, I just do it with my thumb. You can actually probably see there that I have been clicking on this one, but for the most part what I use for clicking is my foot clicker, as seen in my very first video and as displayed here below the table. How this thing works is the 2 black bits that you see there are pedals. I will shift in a little bit. I put my feet over here, and you can hear when I press it clicks. What I've done in this case, because I'm right side dominant, is I've set up left click to my right foot so that I think of it more as main click, like main fire and alternate fire. So I main fire on my right foot and I alternate fire or zoom or whatever on my left foot. So now I'm going to take this out and just go in a little bit more in detail how we built this, set this whole thing up. Okay, so here's how the foot clicker worked. What we did was we looked up exactly how a mouse works. We found out how its switches work. A brief explanation is it has what's called a switch with a normally open and normally closed side. So basically it's got 2 contacts that come in and 1 contact that comes out. The top position, as you can see there, is what's called normally closed. The bottom is called normally open. In this is like your default setting. As soon as you press on the mouse button, it presses a tiny switch on the chip, which then clicks down. So the top stops sending output, stops sending output, and the bottom sends output. That shows that you've started a click, and then as soon as it goes back and completes the cycle, it shows that you've ended a click. So that's 1 click, and that's if you click and drag, it obviously stays open like that. So what we did was we took a mouse chip, which I will show just now what we've done there, and we soldered its contacts. We figured out which contacts were the normally open, normally closed. So basically it has, as I said, it has 2 inputs and 1 output. Then we soldered wires on which are attached to these switches. This is what's called a micro switch. I realize it is gigantic, but from an engineering perspective, it's called a micro switch because it's used in factories and so on. This particular one has a wheel. We found this was very useful because when the pedal presses on it, you want something that can shift a little bit on the top here so it doesn't put unnecessary strain on the switch. When the pedal presses down, that clicks in like that, and there you hear. That's normally open clicking, that's normally closed clicking back. Inside here are 4 contacts. So we have the 2 inputs coming in. One to the switch itself lists which side is normally open and which is normally closed. So we have an input coming into the normally open side and an input coming into the normally closed side, and then on the other side we have the outputs bridged together. No, I've got this wrong, sorry. It's two outputs, 1 input. So we've got the 2 inputs bridged together and the normally closed and normally open outputs coming out. So we've got both the wires going in here. So this essentially bypasses the circuit that's on the mouse and gives it a much sturdier switch. This is weighty enough that it can handle my feet resting on it at a certain angle. If I just put my foot flat down on it, obviously it does click in, but it can handle a fair amount of weight. The whole thing is made in a relatively sturdy wooden construction just because it can hold its weight. And we went afterwards and put these rubber panels on. The rubbers on the feet here serve 2 purposes. Number 1, they stop the varnish from picking up all the dirt from my feet or my socks. I generally don't work with shoes because of the weight of this, and I can just feel what I'm doing better. Number 2, they make it so it doesn't hurt my feet. The hardness of the wood, when you keep pressing on it, eventually starts to hurt your feet. Especially I have a repetitive stress injury on my feet. Sometimes it flares up. So instead what we've got is we've got the rubber on here, which just makes things a bit gentler. The rubber panels on the top here and on the back here are just to stop it from getting dirt in, because we noticed after a while that it was like all the dust, everything that got stuck to my feet or anything just fell in there, and I don't think that's going to be very good for the chips and the wiring and so on. So obviously we've got a switch on either side, and that's how that works. Now we're going to take a look at the switch inside, just so you can get an idea of what's happening there. So what we did here, here you can see the wires we soldered onto the bottom. I'm being careful because we didn't want to overheat the chip, so the soldering is not as strong as we'd have preferred to do it. We decided to just color code this for ourselves to make it easier. We figured out which one was the outputs, which one was the inputs. So the inputs that we have going here are on the striped cables, and the outputs are on the solid colored cables. Or is it the other way around? I'm not actually sure. I can't remember anymore. But what we did was, you look at the switch up top here, it's these two switches. We figured out, okay, there's where the switch itself, there where that little red thing is, that's the size of the switch. That's the part that clicks down, and so we know that that's where we needed to have our outputs, where the input comes in there. So we've got input, the two outputs. In this case we've got input and then the two outputs on that side, and then we just put it inside this box here. We kept the original base of the mouse that we used for this, just to keep it safe. And that's really it. Here's the original USB cable that we just plug into the back of the computer when you're done. Extra side note that I forgot to mention just now: depending on what you use, be careful what you do with the rubber here. I had a pair of white socks. They are now grey socks from using this mouse every day. If it's summer and I'm using this barefoot, the soles of my feet end up pitch black on the balls of my feet where I press on there, because it tends to stain. It doesn't wash out very easily, not in the socks at least. So just beware of that. I now try and mostly use black socks here, or those grey socks, because they're already a lost cause. Dimensions and so on, I mostly measured based on what felt comfortable for my feet, the distance I was happy with sitting, and the size of my desk. I considered making a mount for it to fix it to my desk, but because my desk has a beam that crosses at the back, which you should be able to see now, I just press against that, and it's perfectly fine. Depending on your situation, you might want to have something that actually fixes it in place, maybe attach it to the floor. Speaking of the floor, we got these feet just at a hardware store. It's got a little plastic strip on it. We just pulled it off. I actually want to get a few more feet to cover up the other screws, because I'm scared they'll scratch the floor. All of these so far I placed directly over where we have a screw in the base of this construction, so that it just makes it softer on the floors, doesn't scratch your floor or pull carpets or whatever you might have. If anybody wants any specific information regarding how I did this, you're more than welcome to ask. And thanks for listening. If you're interested in what I'm doing, feel free to head over to my Patreon page, which will be in the description. Subscribe to my channel, drop a like on this video, ask any questions you might have in the comments below, and have a great day. Cheers!